Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Chris.
Steve.
I'm Jared.
And Dan.
And this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. Today's discussion is going to see us through to the end of Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's the first book of the trilogy of the same name by the author. We are going to be going straight to the second book called Children of Ruin. We are going to the end of the past, the second past, which is, that sounds confusing. It's up to about 160 pages in the ebook and in the US edition of the paperback. And the short story for today is Desertion by Clifford D Simak. That's going to be fun to talk about. And next week, the short story will be The Martian by Ray Bradbury. Or is it September 2005, The Martian? I think that's the entire title. Yeah, okay. Yeah. September 2005, The Martian by Ray Bradbury. We are, of course, working our way through the big book of science fiction, and this is the order the stories have been coming up in. With all that said, the ending of Children of Time. What an ending that was.
Yay.
Yeah, I agree.
It was cool.
It was. I'm
a rare, uplifting ending of a sci-fi book.
Well, it was interesting. I don't know if anybody else felt this, but before we got to the ending, I kind of felt the last 60 pages, I felt like, oh no, feels like we're in Hollywood, ending territory of there has to be an action scene, and sort of goes against all the themes of the books in some way. And to actually get the rug pull at the end, I just thought was wonderful, and kind of makes this book kind of elevate another, because it could have easily and much more easily and more predictably went another way.
Yeah, and I think the ending was very brilliantly foreshadowed in how the ant colony wars went. And I think was it Dan or Steve who asked why spiders last week? We got an answer to that question. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Wait, did we? I missed that. Wait.
Well, I think so. The way I'm reading it as an answer to that question is the spiders trap, which is their nature. They build these webs to trap, and they have so basically they try to trap rather than kill their prey. And I don't know other creatures that do that. Maybe there are other possibilities there, but I feel like the spider at least is a good answer. At least that is a good answer to why spiders.
So do you feel that the spiders trapped the nanovirus?
The humans into behaving well.
I read it slightly different. I did get that sense of it, but I actually got that it actually was for the reason that I originally thought what the book was going to be about. Because essentially, this last bit is a total breakdown of how ridiculously parasitic the human race is, and how awful it is in terms of damnation, and that there are other choices, and that they were facing extinction at the hands of the traditional thing that everybody's afraid of on Earth currently, which is arachnids and spiders. So actually, it was sort of like life come full circle, and the fact that even at that stage, the humans were talking about eradicating the spiders, we're talking about burning them all to the ground with the injection of chemical weapons and all the rest of it. That was literally their only thought. And yet the thing that we're all sort of classically afraid of in Earth had a better plan than us idiots.
I like that. The other reason I thought of a spider was the web and interconnectedness, so their inherent nature to see everything as connected to them. And I think there was this nice contrast of the spiders as they became sentient. They built good relationships with other species, and they're all sort of living in harmony, whereas humans destroyed each one, sort of. And
the spiders kind of enslave the ants, though, right? I mean,
they do. I don't think it's quite as straightforward. I agree with you, Steve.
Yeah.
I think it's a subjugation rather than a living, a coexisting in harmony. And I think that's some of the things that make it interesting, I think, going forward, because I was worried about where this seems to be going to end of the book. There's really two books that follow it. What's that going to be about, But
Plus, really, like spiders are by nature in individuals. They never they rarely are in groups. They're not social insects, so it would be like counterproductive to a society actually. So there's a lot of things which actually go against them becoming a sort of society, right? And it was discussed even like all their instincts, like the instinct, for example, to kill the mate. It took a long time to overcome that, right?
Yeah. And I think that the introduction of religion probably helped to reinforce that storytelling aspect to make the spiders look beyond just their own instincts and have that capability of looking at something greater than themselves in forming a society based upon an idea of something like that.
But it is described, it is like most of the reasons seem to be for the nanovirus, really, because that's how they get the humans to also.
Yeah, but I think the nanovirus was working towards that. It's all connected and part of that goal.
Yeah. But it's like, well, the humans created a nanovirus, I guess. So are they responsible in the end for world peace, I guess?
Well, in this case.
I mean,
maybe.
I mean, it's. I don't know. I don't find the spiders as sympathetic, I think, as the rest of you do. I don't think. I mean, I don't think they're. I mean, I think for any species to survive, there has to be conflict. There has to be strife. They have to go through all those, trials and tribulations and battles and wars, and so I get it. But the humans were. I found the humans more sympathetic than the rest of you two because.
Right.
In their minds, this is humanity. I mean, they're trying to survive. It's not only just like the group. This is humanity. If they die, that's it. And the spiders basically kind of enslave them too. I mean, they're I don't know. I think it's kind of a really bleak. I mean, I love bleak endings, but I don't know. It's kind of I don't know. I don't know. I'm not pro spider.
I mean, I am pro spider as opposed to the humans. Like, I definitely think when Tchaikovsky was writing this, he must have been afraid that people will be split on this. You know, he sort of is painting the spiders as even they could be sympathetic to the audience. You know, that people could be caught between it. And there's a couple of lines where he kind of makes it, we're going to kill them, we're going to smash them to bits and all of that kind of stuff, which is the very classic humans are the best kind of story in a lot of ways. But he just kind of plays it a little bit because it is, in one sense, you're absolutely right, Steve. Insofar it's sort of portrayed as a victory for society at the end, but with the spiders winning, but it's problematic. Like we've talked about this in previous weeks, this subjugation of the ants as their computers is not the same as us building technology and using machines. This is using biological beings as a way to make your society run. It's not great. It's
but I mean, it's
quite problematic.
Can you just say it's like animal husbandry?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's
Pretty
the same
normal.
thing as cattle and chickens and everything else we do to those creatures.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said about we haven't really gone into that, explored. One of the things that I think the ants do differently than humans is build biological tech, right? And in theory, that should not be as destructive as humans have been towards their environment. But also, I think they are growing as a population, and they're being selective about what populations grow with them, and therefore I think that will have corresponding impact on the environment. We haven't explored that yet. I don't know if we will in the later books, but there have been like overpopulation of certain species destroys others and so on. So I think that would still be a problem. It doesn't make it fully go away, but I think there is still a greater sense of harmony than you might get. Like, for instance, you're not destroying the entire biosphere with plastic or the equivalent of it, for instance. So So it does
No,
seem better, but
you could possibly have like spread like invasive species everywhere and have like just a monoculture of trees everywhere because that's what's useful for the spiders. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, like that fungus that grew on the other planet that they went to and ate up all
yeah.
the water. So it is still possible to destroy the planet's biosphere, which the humans created and whatnot, but it does feel, in theory, like a better interaction with the environment. It may or may not be. I think there are still implications to this that haven't necessarily been explored.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like it's a perceived harmony right now, but we don't know what that could lead to.
Yeah, we only really got the spiders' perception of it, didn't we? We kind of only got them going, this is why this is better. Because even Kern was, don't do this. Humanity shouldn't be treated this way. They are going to want to destroy you at some stage and overtake you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing to me is, sure, the humans need to survive, and this is probably what they have to do to not have humanity be destroyed. But they aren't even considering an alternative where there could possibly be harmony between the two, whereas the spiders did. And I think that's the key for me. Sure, both species are fighting, and as long as we were supposed to be thinking that the spiders are destroying humans, maybe, as humans we root for them. But I think what stood out to me, and I don't think this is off the mark a whole lot, is that the first thing they want to do is destroy and go to the extent of maybe destroy everything. And that may or may not be an overstatement, but I don't think it's too far from the truth. So
yeah, but they do contemplate the alternative, right? There's that whole like half a page where we talk about the prisoner's dilemma, and you're like, well, if you both choose to release each other, then everything is fine, right? So they did contemplate it, but they're like, the risk of losing in this case, which is everyone of the whole human race dying, is too big to risk it in any way. So that's why they didn't do it. But they were thinking about it once they realized they were sort of sentient.
Well, but the alternative is to destroy another species. It's us or them. And you are choosing for the other species, which at that point, why are you so, as a more elevated or higher species? Like, I feel like it's a responsibility to think about the others. And so...
Yeah, but again, it's a personal dilemma. Like, do you trust the other person, or like if it's you against another person, are you willing to risk your life? Right? It's hard. It's not easy.
And remember their first experience earlier in the book wasn't exactly a good one. So I don't think they expected to be welcomed as friends, because the first time they interacted with the creatures on the planet wasn't exactly good. One of their people were held hostage and experimented on, and the rest of them were killed. So
true.
I can understand the hesitation.
I read that section, which at one tab in the book at the end of it, and it was literally exactly that section we're all talking about here, where I feel like Tchaikovsky is sort of making a point that it's almost cowardice is the easy way out, is to fight and to go to war all the time rather than exploring and taking a chance. I think that's really what he's trying to say, and knowing a bit about what he says in other kind of stories. I could be wrong about that, but he does lay it out very clearly from the character of Edith to basically say, we could do this. These are definitely possibilities for us, but we can't take the chance. And it's easier just to go in and obliterate and commit genocide. And I think that's such a chilling point to kind of go on, because yes, that is correct, but they had no exploration of the other. And I think one of the other things that makes it really interesting in terms of being humanity versus the spiders, the people that we follow in humanity are all really old. The ones that we sort of are attached to care about, like Lane and Holston, etc., and Karst to a lesser degree, they're all dying anyway. It is a dying species. They've got the tribe who sort of were happy enough just to live in space aboard a spaceship in some ways. They didn't need a planet. But these other people
cargo. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was very young, right? They said they were all pretty young.
Yeah. it is interesting. It's hard. I can see how it would be difficult to be enlightened with such little contact to go on when presented with that dilemma, and it's kind of hints at how the nanovirus made the spiders evolve, not just as a, not just like physically and all that stuff, but as a a whole emotional evolvement and everything else that went into it, because the spiders were able to look a little bit beyond just destroying the other in such a short amount of time relatively to the evolution of what humans have been going through. And so I found that fascinating, because the spiders thought about it. When you go back to the beginning of part 6, Bianca is wondering if the things she had created or bred perhaps may one day cross the nebulous line that separates the calculating but unaware from what she herself would understand as true intellect. So she's already wondering if what she's creating with
AI,
the ant colonies and everything else that they're doing with the other species down there, is going to cross some kind of line. And that's been a question throughout human history, is what kind of lines are humans crossing in order to grab the land next door or the other or what have you. And so it's so they're already thinking about that by this point. And so it's just, I love how Tchaikovsky is just throwing all that little stuff in there to make you think how the spiders are thinking so differently already this quickly, and how that must have worked with this nanovirus, which worked that quickly on this species.
Yeah. It also must be pretty useful to be able to go to the library and immediately acquire whatever piece of information you want.
Yeah,
right.
They're living memories rather than testimony, which is through in our history is incredibly unreliable in other ways. History's written by the victors, etc. But if you can actually know for a fact what happened through your lineage, etc., that changes it from unreliable to reliable testimony.
But how would that change for your conception of self? Like, if you construct yourself like bit by bit voluntarily, is it still you? Do you know what I mean? Are you having memories of other people in the past? Like, who are you?
It's a good question, for sure.
Good question,
because essentially, the spiders live forever in some ways, because they take the generation when you start a new life in a new body with the same knowledge that you had when you died. So it again is a very high concept idea, if you know what I mean. How does that change evolution? How does that change a society and the building of a society? And I think he does an excellent job of that. Like, as Jared said, the fact that in their only previous conflict it was won by science and a scientific method, they didn't only just win the conflict, but the benefits and the evolution of their society was kickstarted massively by subjugating the ants at that stage. So their legacy history says that you do not fight, because they were stuck in the place of being wiped out at one stage themselves, and they managed to use this coexisting kind of idea, which, again, I'm a bit like Steve, I'm not sure that's exactly what it is that's going on, because I think that'll come up in the next 2 books. I'm almost sure in that case. But
I guess, how did they manage to unify the whole world under the same? Is it because they couldn't risk going to war again? Because I don't know. Why did they not? Why did they unify? Why didn't they just fight between each other like we do?
Well, they did for a while. There was battle and there was conflict between the different spider tribes, and that was a couple times, I think, and that was resolved in various ways.
I didn't understand why they stopped doing that.
But if you think back to that time of the conflict, Bianca was an outcast. She was doing that in secret. She actually was doing that on a whim as a small group of them at that stage, and it just so happened to work out. But it wasn't part of the spiders' overarching plan, because they were basically a pious kind of, God-fearing world at that stage, and it was only through that change and that win and that victory that both, because Bianca was an outcast in society, even Sans was kind of very much in the out at that stage.
And Fabian too, yeah.
Yeah. Indeed, and they managed to get a victory for the people that actually benefited, but it wasn't part of the design of the spider community at all. It was
so maybe it's like the nanovirus that kind of influences them to not fight against each other, possibly.
I think that was implied to at least not that help them overcome the instincts that make them destroy the males, right? But there was also, I think it also said something about, because they were spider killers, and it did say that their poisons were only useful for other spiders. And so they went from that to not, well, wanting to kill and wanting to go to war, I think are kind of different things that requires a much more large scale capacity for destruction. But is it, I think there might be other factors that weren't necessarily discussed, but that might have contributed to the unification of the spiders. For instance, that they have this one god that they all follow because of the messenger. And we haven't seen them discriminate each other on anything other than gender. And we don't know that doesn't exist. I think they haven't talked about how the different sizes of spiders or what else.
One species of spider, though, right?
It was 3, right? Portia and Fabian, are they different? And Bianca,
I thought
they were all different species.
It's the same species, I thought. It's all a jumping spider species. And the other species that we had beginning, right, there was like the tarantulas, but they're not here anymore.
Okay, so if they were one species, then that makes sense, because like they didn't have anything else to distinguish each other on. And I'm comparing to human history. I don't know what else they might have discriminated against, but they had precious little to fight each other on. But also we are seeing the ants have been subjugated, yes, but the other parts of the environment they have been living with in some sort of harmony, like the creatures in the oceans, for instance, and some beetles. So they have established relationships rather than, well, okay, not that humans did that either. I think humans, a lot of extinctions that happen have been side effects of rampantly spreading across the planet, and it hasn't necessarily been a fight for survival, I suppose, which when it comes to that, the spiders have also gone to those extents. So it would be interesting to see when the spiders start grappling with larger impacts of their existence on the planet. I think that would be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, what I found interesting as well was because it was their worship of the messenger that kind of spurred science on in a lot of cases, as they were trying to figure out a way to communicate with it. And I thought that fascinating, but also at the same time, you still had Bianca the Rebel, who was kind of going against that. And she was aware that the belief was that the messenger was in some way looking out for them, but she still hadn't found proof of supporting facts for that. And so she was still playing the rebel scientist, trying to get more information and more out of that. And that's also, so it's a dual spur to innovation to keep going. That maybe in place of conflict, maybe that's what was keeping their race evolving.
Yeah, I feel a bit like yourself. The comparison of humankind's evolution and the spiders is very much the forefront of all this, but their god was visible and present. And in theory, ours isn't. And so the straying away from God and humanity or otherwise, and the concentration of actually, we believe in God, but our drive in society is about how to better communicate with God, because literally we can see it up in the sky in some ways, is very much the key in the forefront of their whole evolution as a society. And again, contrasting that with humanity and not having that as the case, it being symbolism, the idea of faith. Theirs wasn't so much about faith, it was about guidance, and about the direction they were looking for rather than having faith. And I find that within the concept of a book about sentient spiders or whatever, I find that whole approach fascinating. And I haven't long finished this book, but there are so many multi-level themes. There's so many ideas in it. You can't help but think and understand why people hold this in such high regard of a book, because it's not really about sentient spiders versus humans. It's a contrast of societies, and much it has ways that sci-fi can do.
I think the contrast of this really, I wouldn't say hard science fiction, but all this advanced science and these arcs and these ships and the cryopods and the nanovirus and AI and all these things, and then you contrast that versus survival. And really, when it comes down to it, we are just fighting to survive. So you can put us in this advanced scientific setting, and we still go back to just surviving at any cost. I mean, they get stripped down to we have to survive because of the human race, and they just make decisions based on that as survival. Even with all this other science and the technology surrounding them, they are stripped down to life or death. Yeah.
You said something interesting there, Steve. Was their reasoning for survival was to save the human race, but if you think about it, I think they would have had another reason to try to survive, even if the human race was fine somewhere on Earth or something like that. They would have came up with another reason, and that survival instinct is very strong. I think you're on something there.
A lot of pressure, though.
It is. You get there's that idea floated actually about other colony ships. This is only one colony ship, the Gilgamesh, and around that. But they destroyed the planet. They had a planet to live on. They destroyed it because they fought amongst themselves. And essentially, Amanda Kearns is the Bianca of the society, because she went out and did her own thing and started her own project in a way to save it. In its own way. The parallels are very, very strong that way. In Bianca's case, it became within the planet part of their society, but in the same way, the humanities resolution is also through that rogue scientist that went out and did their own thing to create this planet. So the whole thing is, I just find it so fascinating about how, when you get to the end of it and look back at it, all of these bits kind of mirror each other, but change in ever so slightly different ways. Big fan.
And how do you take the news when you finally talk to your God? How do you take the news that you're not what I wanted, but you're my experiment, and so I'll consider you a success? Like, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, you're like you're an experiment. You're just an experiment. That's all you were. Your whole race, everybody, all this, all from this point on.
I mean, technically, like our race is just an accident, right? So it's not that much better, is it?
Yeah, but it's we have a certain level of hubris about ourselves, I guess, and I don't know if the spiders seem to take it a lot better. I think if the human race, if the God came out of the sky and said, you're just an experiment, maybe I'll wipe you out or something, but I think there'd be a lot more hand wringing, and maybe
it would be good. At least we know where we stand.
That's true. But you even look at the end, by the time Kern does get integrated into society, she's not integrated in an elevated position. She's just integrated into the consciousness. She isn't held. She isn't put in a throne somewhere and says, hello, our leader, as we would classically see in a lot of fantasy sci-fi stories. She is basically, again, guidance, but they have sort of superseded her. And maybe I was reading this wrong, but Bianca had uploaded herself to the consciousness in their own way, hadn't she? She was sort of omnipresent throughout their society. She wasn't an actual physical being, because couldn't they hear it all around her at the end? Did I misread that?
I thought that was just the radio, no?
Oh, maybe.
Well, maybe. I thought she'd sort of went India
Do you
consciousness
mean in the
uploaded in the web.
spaceship in the end?
No, I mean from the moment when they were planning the attack, when they're in this space web, and they're traveling around there. Now, it could have been radio, absolutely, it could have been, but I got the sense that she had sort of uploaded her own consciousness at that point. She wasn't a physical being at that stage.
There was Kern, which was speaking, like, in general, through the consciousness, like, right, in the web or whatever.
I may have interpreted that incorrect, but I thought, again, there's a really nice parallel to, obviously... Kern herself, that they have evolved to a certain point and somebody has elevated themselves in that way. I could have maybe been looking for it because, again, trying to draw the parallels through the whole story between the two bits.
Nguyen was trying to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I am fairly certain that that's radio, but it would be cool if it were not. And
yeah. I guess... Can I go 2 topics that I want to talk before I have to leave after?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask if everyone else also enjoyed that scene where Fabian sacrifices himself to save Portia. That was very, very emotional scene, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think that brought tears to my eyes just a little bit. But
Spider tears?
Spider tears. Crocodile tears.
Yeah, because I was I was liking the spiders, but I didn't think I would get, like emotional, like, oh no. Like that sort of emotions from them, I guess.
Yeah. For sure. That was a very moving moment. And I think on the heels of the fight that Fabian had to go through, like the previous generation Fabian, to get any sort of respect, this self-sacrifice to protect not his superior, but someone he, for some definition of love, loves. I think that was super cool. That scene was brilliant.
Yeah.
Those intercharacter relationships in general, I think, between Portia and Bianca and Fabian, the main three that we see, I think, work just really incredibly well in terms of, especially as their roles within society change from generation to generation. Like some of them go from priestesses to warriors, they get moved around and their hierarchy changes by the end. Bianca's sort of like leading them in some way at the end, but at one stage she was the outcast. So again, those interrelationships are the things that when you got the spider chapter, you're like, oh, give me more of the relationship stuff, which is weird because like, why should it care about spider relationships, spider babies? That's my worst nightmare.
I saw a pretty big spider in the bathroom yesterday after I finished reading the book.
Portia!
I was just going to say, last weekend I was hosing down all the spider webs on my porch and killing them all.
Oh, really? You don't cohabitate with your spiders? I have a couple that live around my house.
There's plenty downstairs in the cellar, so they can stay there.
That hasn't changed my opinion on
the corners in the bathroom or my sleeping room, my bedroom, because they kill all the other insects. So
that's true.
They do.
It's pretty convenient. I just see them. I just vacuum all the other insects every once in a while that they drop.
Whoops.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought was like quite interesting because I was reading the parts where like all the parts where what's his name, M guy, the guy that was getting woken up every time in the ship.
Holston?
Holston. Yeah, Holston. Yeah. And then for him, like maybe like a month passed in total since the beginning of the book, right? And every time he's being waken up after many years, it's like, oh, it's a different generation. Like how crazy is that? And how I was like, I've started to think, I want to see more of this like weird, different like people living different lives. Because there's even like the engineer, right? Like she was also doing like him, but then she started living there, so now they're phased out from each other. And it's, I don't know, I want to see more of that, or like the people that just started sleeping at the beginning from Earth, and now they wake up and it's like all this shit happened, and for them nothing passed, right? It's so, I don't know, it's so crazy to think how it would be and how your mind would tackle with that. I don't.
Yeah, well, there's a great line in here that because Tchaikovsky was giving us a little bit of mythology throughout the whole book here, and Holston's observation amongst those, he observed a myth cycle going amongst the tribe, and how the rest of the key crew was this pantheon of fractious gods and tricksters and heroes and monsters, and he was wondering how many generations had gone by since their contact, and how they turned into almost like a hero worship type of situation. So I thought that was fascinating too. Yeah, because you're right. Like, how do you deal with all that mentally? It's crazy.
And funny to that point about the tribe versus the elders, they have sort of been, the tribe themselves have sort of been subjugated like the ants in some ways to just serving that higher elders, because they had no say and they didn't know what Earth was beforehand. They're just children of the spaceship in some ways, and that kind of realization that Holston has, that actually they don't know the life that they're fighting for. They're literally just fighting for Holston and Lane, etc. I sort of like the idea from Holston's point of view. He likes to scare Lane at the start. I think it's quite good. But every time he wakes up, she's aged 20 years. I must fuck with your psyche.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think a bit of, it's not the same, but it's like the aspect emperor thing, right? It's like these people living forever, how that fucks up also their mind. Like, I don't know. I feel like our mind is not made to comprehend what it would be to experience time in such weird ways. Like, even reading about it, it's kind of like, if you actually think about it, it's like, I don't know how I would deal with it. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see in the future, in 10,000 years.
I think one reason why I'm more sympathetic towards the spiders is these aren't, today's humans fighting for survival. It's humans from 10,000, 20,000 years later. And it's a little sad to think that we'd still let our base instincts rule every interaction with another species. And that bothers me. And I think that maybe it's a bit of a cautionary tale. Like, don't let the species as a whole get like this. Perhaps there was one thing about the ending that I didn't quite appreciate, but I think the whole club versus, what was the other one? I forget what the spider's weapon of choice was. Was it the web? But the Holston's musing about the default weapon that the humans use versus the default weapon that the spiders use. I thought that was very cautionary, let's say.
Do you think that at this point, like, we're so far in the future that the humans are different from us, just like we're different from the monkeys that we evolved from? So, like, they look like not completely, they're very different species, sort of.
You mean at this point in the book, or at this point
in the book? I don't know. Do we know how far in the future it is from now?
So they've slept for 2,000 years. Let's say we don't count that, because they wouldn't have had much growth there, but they've been through one ice age at least. Sorry, Chris, you were saying?
Yeah, I was going to say it was 2 millennia by the time they got to where Kern was from that stage. So then their language system changed. So it's how long, how many generations have we been through from the Gilgamesh arrived at the thing? And you've got to imagine
I'm thinking more, how far is it from year 2000 now to when they had to leave Earth? I'm wondering. Yeah,
like Vasha said, there was ice ages. There was a whole reign of an empire that lasted who knows how long. So long time.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair to the humans, they did survive. They had been fighting to survive, right? The old empire left the planet in ruins, and they've been trying to struggle through the ice age, and that has been pretty much what they've been trying to do for the last few thousands of years. But there's also the fact of not learning from the ancestral mistakes, right? They did destroy the planet, but let's try that again here so we can survive. But in doing so, you're also destroying the possibility of your survival to a certain extent, which I think, if nothing else, that foresight is missing still.
But I mean, how often do you learn from your own personal mistakes and never repeat them? Not all the time.
Not all the time, but as a species.
And certain mistakes, I tend to do them again and again.
Yeah.
I'm making one right now.
Yeah. For those listening, Jared's drinking alcohol, imbibing, as they would say, just in case some imaginations are running wild.
Yeah, just smoking crack or doing, I don't know.
Yeah, just
The worst
clear
thing.
that one
Yeah.
up for you, Jared.
But we're all about imagination here.
Yeah, well, just in case you end up in the FBI watch list or something, there's a keyword that's just come up and says, "Watch this guy." He claims he's Jovian. We'll get to that. It's a cult of some sort.
Okay. On that note, I think I'll go so I don't have to.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Yes. Be safe.
See you next week.
Cheers, Dad. Dear God.
See you, Dan. I'm surprised no one's brought up the embryo.
Oh, yeah. But
The embryo. That's a very nice way
the
to put it.
embryo or the embryos?
The daughter.
The daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
missed the
another thing
sex
they're
thing.
fighting for.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's true.
I mean, I like how they use that in the epilogue, specifically when they talk about the lineage, and then float the idea that the nanovirus is having some sort of genetic memory effect on the human race as well. Their ability to recall events and personalities of their ancestors in some way. I really like that part. Did anybody like the embryo part at the time when it was announced? It was a bit like I was a bit like, there was no need for this. Why can we not have a non-romantic relationship, or at least one that isn't central to the story, if you know what I mean?
I'm just glad it didn't turn into a full-blown romantic thing, because we've read another series that did that and it just didn't. But I'm glad this remained pretty much platonic, except for some casual stuff.
It's like the ultimate surprise. I know you've been asleep for 400 years, but wait till you come into this room, will I show you what we got?
Oh, and you're gonna go back to sleep, by the way.
Go back to sleep. I got a baby in here for you. Can't run away. You're the daddy.
Don't go dying on me.
And if I die, you've got to bring her up by yourself. Just see you later.
By the way, I'm staying awake, so I'm going to die.
It was also quite funny, I think, to that end when, the reveal that Lane wasn't there and they said, we're going to wake up Lane. And it's one of those ends of the chapter where you're supposed to like a big reveal. But I think because of the nature of the story, you're just kind of like, well, of course she's not dead. Everybody's been to sleep in this book. It's not exactly like, how did they do that? That's incredible.
Yeah. I think I didn't like, I don't have opinions on this specific embryo, but I did like what they did about, I was talking last time about the fact that the children being misused is kind of really terrible in like when you're fighting for the hope of a future for humanity. So I think I liked the shift from there to we're even going to protect the embryos now so we can expand and build out the population here and have some hope for the future. So I did like that.
It also gives us a little bit, again, of symmetry with the fact that our central characters were continuing life, that there was possible relationships. Because, again, a bit like the Spiders, the Fabian-Portia romance never really happened in some ways. It was sort of hinted at, but didn't become a central part of the story, other than, like, one kind of act of sacrifice or otherwise. It wasn't like... There was no love triangles. There was no none of that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it was, she always, well, maybe not always, but he was always, or any male spider was viewed as less than.
That's right.
So
that's right. Yeah,
it was more like, until towards the end, but for the most part, they were just husks.
Yeah. In some cases, that's all they were at the end when they get their life sucked out of them.
Yeah.
The sacrifice of Fabian did echo a little bit the sacrifice to a son. Yeah, it was a sacrifice of Lane as well, right? Like she kept on living so that everyone else can survive. And I think the whole romantic / embryo angle was to say, like, she has a little bit of a vested interest in the future too.
Yeah.
So I think that I liked that parallel there as well.
Yeah, especially when you consider that the motivations of Guyan, who she killed, was like he was like almost going to be the megalomaniac. He was going to be the guy who wouldn't give up life because he thought he was so important. That hubris that that Jared was talking about, of humanity in some ways, but hers was kind of a bit more centered in traditional human values, I suppose, something like that. You know, the idea of family and survival and all of those things that we've talked about beforehand. You know.
Yeah, yeah. The understandings, I think there was something that was said in two chapters back to back. One was Bianca, she can keep refreshing the things that she has understandings of based on whatever she's studying at the moment, and she can do that very easily. And in just the previous chapter before that came up, Holston is being snarky to one of the children, one of the people who grew up on the ship, asking if he's just learning, like doing engineering by rote, and he gets yelled at and says, "We've been learning this stuff. You think we can fix the ship without understanding it?" And so I think the contrast there between how easy the understandings were for the spiders versus how hard this kid probably had to have worked to get to the point where they can fix the ships, and it's not even really for them. I thought that was very interesting as a contrast between the two species.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think what really sets the spiders apart is that they pass memories down. I think that's really what separates the two species, and that's what gives them the upper hand. Yeah, but was I the only one who felt it was a little bit silly? Like, am I the only one who felt like this, especially the last action sequence? Or did anyone feel like it hard to connect to the spiders because they are spiders? You want to feel a little bit disconnected, or is it just me?
I thought about it more from the authorial point of view when Tchaikovsky was planning to write it. Like, he can't have known that people would have attached to spiders or humans at that stage. I think it's a very difficult thing to approach and write when you're writing a new story to say, like, how do you approach this? Because, as you say, identifying with spiders wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea. If you're trying to write a successful published novel, that's got to play in your mind a little bit. I sort of, when I thought that they were just going to murder the humans, I was definitely in the camp of, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel thematically right for the novel. I just don't want this sequence. It doesn't fit for the novel, if you know what I mean. It just, destruction and all the rest of it doesn't fit. I actually could have cut all those 50, 60 pages out. Now, I see that it has a value towards the end for sure, but yes, I would agree that while I was reading the scenes, I really didn't have a sympathy. I really just had the thought of, this is really the end of humanity. That's really the only primary thought that I had. This is how this version of humanity dies out, and it wasn't really about picking sides or anything. It was just a factual sort of thing that I was coming to.
Yeah, I think if he wanted to make it a bit more existential, a bit more grimdark, maybe, if you want to use that term, then the humans would have been wiped out as a result of this interaction, and maybe as a statement of humanity's run its course, and that's it, but he did bring it around to a I guess happier ending than that. And I guess I was, at first I was kind of like, oh, that's nice. That was nice, because the book was such a quick read, and it wasn't like I was getting bogged down in anything along the way, like either hard science or dense prose or anything like that. It was written to be read fast, and like a sci-fi, big screen type thing, and he succeeded massively. I think he did an awesome job at pulling that off, and so I think that kind of an ending where it would be a downer, where the human race died off, wouldn't have quite matched, I think, what he was going for. So I liked it. I'm not sure. I was trying to think. I was trying to think of a better ending, a possible better ending that still felt good, and I really couldn't do it. So I was just like, I ended up being pretty satisfied with it.
I thought the ending was pretty bleak. The human race has fundamentally changed forever, and if this is the last, I don't think it's based on the other books. I think we're going to have different arcs or different shifts of people, but assuming that this is it for humanity, they're completely different, and they're I don't know if the spiders are the dominant race. I mean, the humans are a shell of what they're I think it's almost worse than them being wiped out in some ways.
Really?
So I have two possible counters to that. Possible. One, I think at some point, Kern says the nanovirus only speeds up what would have already happened if things had been allowed to run their course. So, but that said, the spiders extracted portions of the nanovirus, maybe didn't increase the brain size and stuff, but in theory, you could feel better about the subjugation of humanity by saying that it just sped up the eventual arrival of universal empathy, let's call it. And and the other thing, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the other counter is that I think that they have the spiders apparently still think of the humans as their creators and hold them in a modicum of respect. So I don't think they will serve the same purpose as the ants do. And we see later on that they're working well together and so on. But I don't think that they are occupying the same space in the spider's mind as all the other creatures that they have put to use. With all that said, I think the use of the nanovirus to make the humans nicer, I have very mixed feelings about that. I think I've been the optimist, and I've been hoping that the humans realize their mistakes and decide that they can coexist with the spiders and, figure out. I would have liked the humans to be the originators of that. I think where Tchaikovsky went is that the spiders are giving the humans a lesson in empathy, so to speak. However, it was done forcefully, and I can see why that's necessary to end the story where it did, because there is no way that you can convince these thousands of humans to not try to destroy something that they have been creeped out by their entire existence. So I think that's just not going to happen. So you needed that for the story. But in terms of concluding a satisfactory conclusion of the themes of humanity learning from its mistakes, that did not happen. We got an understanding of the way spiders do. It wasn't learned, and I think that's why the scene stood out to me as well, between the child in the ship and the understandings of the spiders, that it came too easily, which means it can go away easily too. And yeah, that just bothers me a little bit about how that resolution came.
It isn't that they actually understood. It's like they were chemically altered to know rather than them understand. He comes out and says, I understand what's happening now, but that's not, he wasn't made to understand at all. He was literally injected with the mind control serum in some ways. To people to have that knowledge, which again is, I mean, it's funny because I think the reader goes, well, it's better than them all dying. It still doesn't make it good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. We talked about how ending humanity would be nihilistic. I think it would have also been pretty bleak if humans had landed on the planet and survived by destroying all the spiders. I would just not have been okay with that.
Yeah.
And that would have been that could have been a possibility. And so I think this was a good middle ground. I agree with you, Jared. I think resolution wise, the end point, I think, was exactly where I was hoping they would go. But
well, I think a good question might be, how self-aware are the humans now of their changing outlook, chemically altered outlook. Like, do they know that they are only seeing, they're only able to work together with the spiders because they've been chemically altered, or is that something that's kind of hidden from them and they're just like zombies working with this? You know what I mean? I don't think that was answered here. I think that's a question that maybe we'll get later in later books, or we're just supposed to be left wondering it. But
so is that ethically justified to chemically alter a whole race or whole species to?
Yeah, I don't know, and how, like, because we don't really get how the humans feel about that. We don't get their point of view at the end, like Chris said. So I don't know if they're fully aware that some of their instant must kill others instincts are dampened.
Does it matter that it's very clear from how things went out that the spiders were definitely going to win that battle? Does that alter your feelings about it?
I wasn't sure about that. Yeah.
I mean, are you asking if we were allowed to think that? Because until the very end, it felt like the humans were going to win.
Oh, do you think so? As soon as they got inside and they give the appearance that it looked like they were basically just stabbing them and killing them and ripping them apart and that kind of stuff. And they, like, Holtzen and Lane are basically feel like they're the only ones alive in the ship at that stage. It's very much them locked in the thing. You think that the spiders had a chance to wipe out humanity here? Like they very much did. And by framing it in that way and then them sort of getting saved, or this understanding that they've come to, it sort of feels, oh, well, at least they weren't killed. You know, I think that, does that narrative choice actually frame the resolution? You know, because if it had done that at the start, you know, it would have been even more unsatisfying. If you know what I mean, I think we would have been much more conflicted about this going thing. I will say though, if that had been the way it stumbled out the fight, I think that also would have been a great setup for book 2. Just even in its own right, that humanity was enslaved at the end of it. Like I think that as a concept is really interesting.
Yeah. I think so. I guessed from the first time we were told that Khan begged the spiders to change their mind about how they deal with the humans, that the spiders didn't want to destroy the humans because we know Khan has absolutely no sympathy for the humans. So if she's begging them for a certain outcome, it's not to please spare humanity. So I think I read the whole thing with that in mind. So when they first injected the first human, I thought, that guy's just, I thought it was just to put them out. Honestly, I didn't think that they'd go the nanovirus route. But yeah, so the whole time my sympathy was with the spiders, because I guessed that the spiders weren't going to destroy everyone and the humans weren't contemplating other options. And yeah, I guess I was rooting for the underdog there. But I'm trying to think, if I did think that the spiders were absolutely going to kill them, what that might mean. Oh, and by the way, when I said until the very end, I didn't think the spiders would win, I meant the end as in until they landed on the hull of the ship, because we saw how easily they destroyed the web of the spiders, and that they have better technology than the spiders. So I thought this was going to end with the spiders. Well, that would have been a possibility, that the spiders are fully destroyed.
I was dreading that somebody was going to come out somewhere from some lab in the ship and go, I got a new bug spray. And you know.
Oh yeah.
Again, the fruit of that idea that they just had this killer
But I'm glad it didn't happen, but I was dreading it. I was just like, no, please don't let that be how they resolve this.
Was anyone else driven completely mad by Vetus? I hated her so much. But yeah.
To be fair, Vetus was the one who was very obviously afraid of spiders, you know, without the kind of legacy thing. So when Vetus was getting attacked and they're coming through the glass, a bit like I kind of thought, that's quite humorous in some ways.
It was,
Yeah.
but
I don't know if you picture that in a movie scene, that would be quite horrifying. I think.
No, absolutely. But maybe it goes to speak to the fact that I just didn't want that Hollywood action scene ending to the book. It's one of the things that I hate most about modern sci-fi is the fact that all of them feel like they have to pitch the movie, and to pitch the movie you need the action ending, and you're like, but you've done all this thematic work for 500 pages. Stop this. This is not needed.
I knew the spiders wouldn't. I knew the spiders would win, because if they didn't win, people would be complaining all these years about how they hated the end of the book.
Yeah.
So I know if the spiders would have died, people would have complained about it. So
That's a good point.
did you guys see that James McAvoy blubbed the book? Is that a thing now? Do actors blub books? Was it? I saw his blub on the second book. I don't know if it's also on the first book, but I think it was a first book blub.
Oh yeah, far out.
that's cool.
Yeah.
He hasn't blurbed mine.
No, it's the second book. Second book.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at the second book. So I have Peter F. Hamilton, the Guardian newspaper, and Justina Robson and Stephen Baxter.
Oh, you got a different thing. Okay.
Oh, is it the inside? Oh, there's more on the inside covers. There
Yeah.
are. No, James McAvoy, brilliant science fiction of far out, man. Yeah,
Professor X approves.
and Gareth Paul's done one as well. Very good, good spot, Steve. I would have been writing to the publisher to say you did me out of a James McAvoy endorsement.
or Mr. Tumnus approved, whichever you wanted.
Sir Thomas. Yes. Oh dear. These
Yeah.
jokes, I like them.
But there were a lot of sections in the end that I loved. Like, we've been talking about the actual ending, but the parts that built up to it, like the spiders and their space flight, their building of the space elevators, I thought that was brilliant. I think the conflict in the ship again, and a lot of Holston's internal musings. I think I wished he had spoken up more. Not that anyone would have listened to him, and maybe that's what he was afraid of, and that's what they want to tell us. But I wish he was a bit of a less passive character towards the end. But yeah, overall, I think I highlighted like something in every paragraph. So
I love when he thinks about the old empire contacting extraterrestrial intelligence, and he just says, "Why would we ever want to?" And I was just like, you know what? That's interesting, because all the time it's like we're always thinking about sci-fi and aliens, and it's like, and he's like, really? Why would you ever actually really want to? And I was like, yeah, think about that. That's pretty. From a historian's perspective, that's pretty profound.
Well, there was that, and the fact that Holston is the person that wanted to lead the whole conversation about what is sentience. Like, what does it actually look like? What does it exhibit? Yeah. Does this change what we're doing if they are sentient in some way? And literally nobody wants to hear him, but he's the classicist, so to speak. He's the person that thinks far back. I did like that aspect as well quite a bit.
yeah, I think it was nice that I was getting annoyed at, was it Karst or someone who was refusing to acknowledge that there could be something else out there. He's like, no, Khan built these random web things here or something. But I liked it when the source of that confusion was resolved, because they've just come from a planet where a mushroom has taken over the planet. So it makes sense to think that the spider webs are some overgrowth like that. So yeah, that was a nice touch, I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, the coolest thing was the space elevators of the spiders.
Space elevators.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I thought that scene two scenes where Khan first figures out that it's the spiders, and then immediately she changes her tack from this high-handed goddess to, okay, I'm here for you, I will help. That was brilliant. And then when she tells Fabian, I salute you. that I think was among the things that brought tears to my eyes. But that was,
Yeah.
Hope you get a lot of tissues there, Vasha.
I didn't need. I need tissues for an upcoming cold, but no.
So compared to the rest of the books we've read, how's it rank?
So we got
We're doing this.
we got Southern Reach.
Southern Reach Trilogy in Embassy Town and Stories of Your Life. A story of your life, should I say?
Do you guys agree that they all, not stories of your life so much, but the other novels that we've read, deal with very similar themes of like humans destroying their environment and the repercussions of that? That's
Yeah, very much
sort of
so.
been a thing so far. It's
Very, very much so. Yeah. And if you'd have told me that was an aspect of, a large aspect of books, science fiction 10 years ago, I'd have said, no, that's in the future. That's where the sci-fi is heading, but it's already here in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's definitely a sign of our time because all these, it's, what was it, Chris? You said that science fiction is about today, right?
It's about today, yeah.
It, that definitely
That rings true for sure.
rings true, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would rank like third for me after Annihilation and the second book in the
Authority.
Southern Reach, Authority. Maybe it would maybe take number 2, but Annihilation's still, I think, my favorite that we've read.
Tough.
It is tough.
Yeah.
I'm a bit the same with you, Steve. I think there's something about some of those Southern Reach books that I think it's maybe the slight not really telling you what's going on that really jibes with me. Regardless of how you think it pans out in the third book, but at that stage we didn't know book 1, book 2. We just didn't know. We just kind of liked the kind of speculating side of that quite a bit. I like the weirdness and the kookiness of it. The fact that it really wasn't a reality. This one is maybe, even though it's sentient spiders, it's sort of based on reality. I can sort of see it playing out. I can sort of see the parts of it. There's not as much mystery there, if you know what I mean. The fact that they even told us it was a nanovirus and it was designed takes some of that away. So, yeah.
It's a really tough choice, but I'm gonna go with this one though, because to me it's more epic, and I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Really good book, yeah.
Oh, it's super. It well deserves its
I mean, I
reputation.
really loved Annihilation too, so it's really hard, really tough choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's number one for me with Annihilation. I think so I can't decide between the two because Annihilation was a more enjoyable read, like for all the reasons you said, Chris. I loved thinking about what the heck is going on and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But in terms of the density of themes, and I think some of the writing, especially towards the end, I think it really tugged at all my heartstrings. So I think for that reason, Children of Time. So both of them up there.
It's another one definitely to add to the list of, like, Jesus, we've read some good books this year. Like, holy hell.
Yeah, Steve's already, not Steve, Chris is already trying to decide his top 10 and failing.
My
And it's not
God.
even half the year.
It's ridiculous. I think to have it anyway being an interesting list, I have to exclude anything that appears in the top 100 books of all time, which in my case is quite a lot of them reads. Because
Oh, nice.
how do you compare like a Children of Time to some of the SF masterworks that we've read, or the Blood Meridian, or any it's like, comparing apples and oranges and stuff. Like, they're both books, they're both fruits, but they do very different things. Instead of do very different things.
Yeah, well, that's why it's about being your favorites rather than actually.
Yeah, that's right. Rather than being best, that's a very prescient way to put it. There's no doubt. Yeah.
Nice. Are we ready to talk about Desertion, or did we miss anything?
Thank you for making me read that. That was great.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's all due to Steve Schwartz. I like that you've embraced that nickname
Oh
now.
yeah, I'm gonna milk that thing. I'm gonna milk it dry. Yeah, it's my thing now.
I do love that nickname. This is for if you're not familiar with the reference, it's a second apocalypse reference, and Steve got that nickname from one of the listeners of that series of videos
Right.
that we've been making.
Nice.
I'm gonna ride that wave as long as it takes me.
Nice.
All right, Desertion, Clifford D Simak. What did you guys think?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
I like it.
This might have been, well, okay, so I have gone on a bit of a rabbit hole for the Borges story, both because of I wanted to know more about it, and also because we have another discussion on it coming up this week. But I think this is so it has since become my favorite story of all the ones we've read so far. But this might be my second favorite.
Wow.
I like Simak's writing quite a bit. I mean, I read a novel of his earlier on. I read this. What he manages to do with characters, it's interesting because he doesn't make them sympathetic. They're interesting characters. You know what I mean? You're not rooting for the characters. You're not kind of worried about their implications. Even the 4 people that went missing, you can sort of see where the story's going. But it's the introduction of the dog that really makes this story tick. Because it introduces a flavor. Yeah. It introduces a flavor to the story that you don't often see explored in this kind of classic sci-fi. In some ways, it's a lot about humanity. This one's about a companion. And even the thought that he's going to bring the dog is like, that's a really good idea. And then especially coming down to the last line that he sees him speak really just gives it such resonance in some ways. You know, the idea, God, I don't want to go back to being a dog. He's like, well, I don't want to go back to being a man, you know. And end scene, close credits, very, very good.
I love how he gives us so much information right in those first 5 sentences about what's going on here. You get, 2 by 2, these men go into this howling maelstrom and don't return. And you got the keening gale. He describes them as loping. Bellies low against the ground. You don't know what that means right away, but there's something there to give you a mental cue of what's going to happen further on. And then he says that they did not go in the shape of men. So now you're like, well, what did they go in the shape of? And so that's just giving you all this sensory information to predict what's going to happen coming up in the future. And then we had we have another guy getting ready to go, and we have the dog scratching the flea down to sleep again. So we're getting introduced to all these little variations here of what is upcoming and what to expect in the coming story, because it's kind of there's an undertone of not being that serious to this opening first lines, but yet still a serious situation for the outcome of what these people may go through, and setting you up for wonderment at what's going to happen. And then, of course, at the end, we know why, because he's in this ultimate, he ends up in this ultimate like joy almost about all the stuff he can sense, and it was well done. It was really short, which was and it was nice, and a big idea, just a big idea that really came across well, I thought.
And like 1940 something,
44.
44. So talking about the exploration that we use so little of our brains, in terms of brain capacity and all, again, that can't have been common knowledge certainly about that time, and the fact, and also what would that look like? Because I often find trouble, but you hear that sentence a lot. I have trouble conceptualizing what else are we being locked out from? And actually, the description of it here was short, vivid, but it worked.
And I think I loved the descriptions. I'm with you, Jared. when the transformation happens and how the world looks from this Loper's eyes, that I loved that. And comparing that to, what was it, The Martian Odyssey, where the guy keeps talking about meeting more intelligent creatures, and the guy he's telling the story to just keeps calling them dumb. And compared to that, this story that takes I think I'm realizing that I really like stories that take down human hubris. And,
Yeah.
and this one did so, and it did sort of lay the foundation for that by saying, oh, maybe these creatures can't handle the human mind, and then it turns out the human mind can't handle these creatures, or it would much rather be them. And I think I love the little elements of the world that with the stuff that is hinted at here. You can imagine the future that humanity is at right now, right? Because apparently they're using these machines to transform into creatures, and they have been that can live on this planet, and to and that they've colonized a lot of other planets too. And I think I complain about Cities in Flight a lot, but They Shall Have Stars I loved deeply because of how it explored the Jovian environment. And I think this story also I love for that reason. I loved the description of how Jupiter looks, and going from how much of a hostile environment it is to something that a creature built for that planet can live in quite well and enjoy it too. I think that transformation was brilliant. I think, yeah, this story has become one of my favorites for sure. What do you think, Steve?
I liked it. I thought it was really good. I wasn't really sure what to expect. Like Jared said, I wasn't sure where we were going with it, but I did like it's pretty touching.
Yeah,
I thought what was very interesting about it, because I didn't actually. Normally, I check how long it is so that I can work out how long it'll take me to read. But I didn't know that, and when I sort of thought that the way that it was set up, there was going to be like another 4 or 5 pages, and yet when I got to those last couple of lines, I was like, "That's deeply satisfying." Turn the page, done. I was like, "Right, okay, you got me a little bit,"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I liked the vaguely self-righteous woman too. That's like, oh, you're just gonna kill more people. Oh, you want to kill 2 in one shot, but you can make it last longer if you just go one at a time.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun story, and definitely I was looking at my shelves going, should read another Simak book? He's definitely got interesting writing chops. He reminds me a lot of Emily St. John Mandel, I think, in the character work and writing these sort of plain but interesting sort of combinations of characters about how they work together and stuff. I can see a lot of similarities there.
Nice. Yeah. I've got to read some St. John Mandel at some point. Oh, I think I'm going to read Sea of Tranquility soon.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, was there anything else about the story or Children of Time before we wrap up for the evening?
No. I do hope the next book in the series in Children of Bruno, I hope we have a whole different set of characters. I hope that and not because I didn't like it, just because I think it'd be fun to explore different ideas from different sets of.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, that'd be.
I want to see stuff off the planet. I don't want to see a battle for a planet. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want to see the surface level or like fighting for resources and stuff.
I don't want to see all the humans and the ants and the spiders battling the beetles. Unless it's John Paul, Ringo, and George.
I don't know that reference.
That's the Beatles, the band. It's the band, the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
Dear me.
Culturally illiterate, sorry.
I don't know who to be more afraid of. I think I'm more afraid from that point that I can no longer make that reference. with people
No,
more
it's
than
not.
like.
No, I just wasn't a very aware person growing up. I don't think I still am. I wasn't tuned into pop culture. That's fine. It's not you. But what was I saying? Yeah, there was also a hint of other arc ships that came towards the
Pretty
end,
late.
right? That was
Yes,
not
yeah.
mentioned before. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we'll follow one of those or run into one of those.
I think it hints or mentions at the very beginning, but it doesn't come up again to the very end. So maybe that was just thrown in as like a more to come kind of thing.
Yeah. So more possibility of arc ships or wherever they are headed that could and also I think Khan said that there were other planets that humans colonized. These ones were just special that they terraformed newly. So there's that. The signal that the Holston descendant is chasing, that would be that's probably where we'll end up in the second book, right? So that could be anything. It could be a previous arc ship that landed somewhere, or it could be a previously colonized planet, in which case we'd run into the old empire again. So this should be fun. I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. With that, we'll see everyone next week with the first 160 pages of Children of Ruin and with the short story September 2005, The Martian. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Bye, Ray Bradbury. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.